And yes, we say it every time. One of these days, we'll have an intro video for there when we go live. And what we need to decide is like, what do we actually want it to be? Do we want it to be a 60-second countdown? Or
Yeah,
a
I think that would be
30-second
like
countdown?
Yeah, with some droids, maybe like some like bug droids doing stuff or something. I don't know. Yeah. It's got to be something that we can repetitively do. Like it doesn't have to can't be different every time.
Maybe every time there's a new Android release, we add 1 to the countdown. So we're on Android 15, so it's gonna be a 15-second countdown.
Yeah, but it's got to last a minute though.
Let's see here. If I go to Runway ML, generate video.
Oh, geez.
I wonder, like,
Let's see it.
The image generation does, has an awareness of the Android figurine.
Yeah, I mean the whatchamacallit, the AI awareness of the bug droid has rapidly increased over the last few months. That's for sure.
So let's see here. This might be out of my ability to just whip this out super quick, but but I like a good challenge. Always like myself a good challenge. Drag that in there. Describe your shot. Bud droid counting down. I don't know what is the amount of time that this actually gives.
60. Give it a minute. Give it a good. Like,
Well,
but
minute,
yeah.
the generative
but what is the
AI,
countdown?
Yeah, I don't think
Right.
Runway. I don't think
Yeah,
any
it
of the
does up
video
to 10
generators do
seconds.
more than like. Okay,
Right.
yeah, that's
Right,
pretty.
Yeah,
even a little bit would be better than nothing. Yeah.
10 seconds. Bug droid counting down from 10 to 1. As if it's New Year's Eve. Sure, go. It's in queue. We'll see what it comes up with. Probably something unusable would be my guess. But you never know.
But you never know. It could be
It's
amusing.
a fun little experiment.
Yeah,
I have some
exactly.
credits on Runway, so I figure I'll just
I love it.
check it out and see.
So for those of you watching at home, Win is in London doing cool DroidCon London stuff.
London-y things.
Yeah. I
More
didn't realize
Unfortunately,
DroidCon?
we can't all be there this time.
I was gonna say I didn't
Yeah.
realize DroidCon London was so soon after DroidCon New York, or I would have tried to
Yeah.
figure out a way for us to get there. We might have to go next year.
That'd be
It would
nice.
happen.
I
That would
feel
be
like
nice.
I feel like DroidCon
DroidCon Berlin, I think, is the big one.
is the big one. I've never
Yeah.
been to Berlin.
Oh, I would love to go to Berlin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then one of the nights, see if there's like a techno club.
Oh wow.
Go check out some techno in Berlin. That's like
Wow.
that would be an interesting experience. 98% it's sitting at right now.
What was the prompt that you used?
Oh, I mean, I didn't come up with anything very creative at all. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm previewing it first because I don't want to put something on the stream and then regret it entirely. I mean,
So,
it's
Cousin
not-
Ajah, for context, we are looking into making an intro video, a countdown of sorts, like a minute long. And so Jason has access to some credits for Runway, which can generate videos up to 10 seconds long. So we're just going to see what that's like. Oh,
the counting.
wow. It's like the full 3D droid bod right there.
Totally.
Nice.
Just
And
completely.
Just the countdown is a bit off. That's
Yeah,
all.
I know. Totally. 1, 5,
Actually,
9.
that's actually kind of awesome. It just that's pretty cool.
So I think next time I would do it, and I wouldn't say anything about a countdown. I'd
I think
just
add
put
the
droid
countdown-
there and animate it, and then
yeah.
add that later.
Yeah, then add the
Yeah.
countdown later or whatever. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Is that a 9 or an 8 that's missing a
I
prong?
like the countdown though, because like who says we have to go 10, 9, 8, 7? We can go 1,
1,
S 9 S.
S9. I mean, it animated that thing pretty well, I think. It's not bad for a minute's worth of waiting.
I mean, if it's uncanny, it's fine because it's not a
Totally.
person.
Like, what you gonna do? It didn't recognize this as a copyrighted character. This is a copyrighted character, right?
It has to be.
Yeah, you can't use it in commercial products. Like there's like licensing terms or something like that.
Yeah.
But, like I don't know, like I don't know exactly how much Google enforces. Obviously, we're not going to sell anything with the Droid bot on it.
No.
But yeah.
Okay, well now we know that that's one way to get at least 10 seconds worth of animation. Then you can loop it, you know. Then we could just loop it or reverse it or you know what I mean, have it go front back.
Yeah, got to stream this.
Something along those lines.
Android faithful number 68.
I got a new whatever. Why am I suddenly blanking? My teeth. I'm getting old. I can't think anymore. Not braces. Invisalign. I got a new Invisalign tray today. Went to the orthodontist, and my teeth effing hurt right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Fun times. I don't know that I've had an Invisalign tray that hurts quite like this. This one's just like screaming at me. Okay. Well, y'all, I guess Mishaal, let me know once you've got all of your streamy things in place, and then unless we have anything
looking
else,
up a title,
kick it off. Kick off the jams. Oh,
all right.
I had braces when I was a
go.
teenager. Then when I was told I had to wear my retainer for the rest of my life, I was like, hell no. Yeah, me too. And probably many people who got braces when they were kids. What's different this time is once everything is straight, then I get it's not a retainer. It's like an Invisalign tray for upper and lower that I wear only to sleep. And that I can do. That I'm happy to do for the rest of my time. I don't mind that at all. I just pop it in and go to sleep, But if I had to wear like a retainer all the time, like screw that. Oh, with the headgear. It's horrible. Okay, we good?
Yeah. I'm ready.
Yay. Okay, and Ron, you were doing the intro and the outro. Mishaal, I will backstage you or remove you from the stage, whatever they call it. Let me make sure I've got all my things. Oh, there's like a preview. There's like a preview now in the brand section. That's interesting. I don't understand.
Ooh, that's cool.
I don't understand what it's telling me though. Like it doesn't look like.
No, if you edit, that's where you change. They moved all the coloring and the themes and stuff like that. Yeah.
I get it now.
So they cleaned that section up big time. Yeah, I see.
Oh.
Also, anyone who tunes in to watch the live stream can also discover new features in StreamYard live. So
yeah, or I'll bring you back in for a second. Or you can discover our upsettedness or my upsettedness when like a couple of weeks ago when they finally rolled out all these features to StreamYard. They also rejiggered the pricing structure and the tiers.
Yep.
And they're like, you don't need to touch a thing. We moved you to the tier that makes the most sense for where you were. It's $400 more than what I was paying before. Like they just automatically moved me and said, don't worry about it. Meanwhile, it's $400 more.
Oh,
like,
God.
Are you kidding me? Like, I get it if it's like, oh, and it's just $20 more, but like $400 is a lot of money.
$400 a month or yearly?
Yearly.
Yeah.
I mean, basically what they did is they doubled the price on what I was paying.
Yeah. No, the price shift was dramatic. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but that tier, like I don't need it. It's got 4K. And we're not streaming in 4K, and so I'm gonna downgrade. Anyways, that's my little rant. Okay, for reals this time.
For
Mishaal
realsy.
gone. Me stop cammed. Ron there. Overlay. Boop boop. We don't have a billboard ad to read, so it's
No
like
ad.
It's like the old days, olden times. All right, here we go.
Well, hello and happy pre-Halloween to you, my friends. This is Android Faithful, your weekly source of the latest news, hardware, and apps for the world of Android. I'm Ron Richards.
Oh, I wish I had fangs. I'd be a vampire, but I'm just Jason Howell.
And I'm Mishaal Rahman.
Mishaal, have you thought about dressing up as the bug droid for Halloween? Like, did the thought even cross your mind?
Honestly, no. But
there you go.
That's a pretty good idea.
I
wonder if anyone can help make a costume like that, or if they. I doubt there's any costumes for the bug droid.
Honestly, that's the next.
Cool.
We've got the little figurines. We got the plush bug droid. Next should be like costumes, like straight up like Spirit Halloween Party City costume. You can go get to be bug droid. Apple doesn't have a cute little character that you can dress up as for Halloween. Android does.
That's right. Yeah. Android has a very adorable mascot, and if you saw the socials today, I posted about a new droid figurine that just went on sale on the merch store, and they have them all dressed up in like the
holiday
Chrome Dino
gear.
holiday gear.
Very, very cute.
Dripping down.
Already ordered one immediately. I'll show y'all some pics when it arrives.
Yeah, I didn't pull the trigger on that one. I pulled the trigger on the last two. I did not pull the trigger. Ever since my wife asked why these were all getting shipped to the house, I should pump the brakes there. But
Mishaal, this might be controversial to say this, but pull out the little plushy guy for a second. When I look at him, I realize if you are willing, only if you're willing to slice him open, hollow him out, and wear him as a mask, I think that would work.
That just became a horror film as well.
Well, speaking of horror, we got some pretty neat Halloween themed.
Yeah. So last week we had a user submitted bug droid theme for Halloween. We have another one later on in the show, but we want to give a shout out to not The Chosen on X, Twitter/X, whatever. Sad Dream, his name is. He sent us a happy early Halloween, Android Faithful, and he made a very spooky bug droid ghost. I don't know if this was AI generated or if he did this with Photoshop himself or whatnot, but it's for our audio listeners, it is a ghost with a bug droid head with a jack-o'-lantern eyes and mouth in a graveyard, a very purple themed graveyard. Very impressive, and it scared me when I opened it up on social.
I mean, it has to be
so
AI,
good.
right? Like, what are those flying things? Are they foldable? Those are foldable phones.
They are foldable phones. You're right.
Those are foldable phones. Okay, so maybe not.
That's very clever.
Strange detail.
If they did use AI, they definitely didn't use it for the whole thing, because there's no way AI would have generated that text logo perfectly like that.
Oh, totally.
I'm asking live on Twitter if he did this. Did you create this yourself, or did AI generate
Yeah, I'd love to know. I mean, some of the tells and like the cross the like graveyard crosses might look a little strange, and they actually look pretty like consistent between each of them. So yeah, this could be legit, the way artists have done for years. Versus now just writing some words and saying,
well done, bravo. And we have
done. Looks
we
great.
have another Halloween themed bug droid that we'll get to later in the show when we do the patron pick. So you guys are awesome for sending this stuff in. But before we get into the news, quick programming note, a little admin here. We talked about it last week. We were wondering what we're going to do next week. Next Tuesday is election day here in the United States. And, it's just another election day. No big deal.
No big deal.
But this is where we've netted out. We are actually going to pre-record the show. We actually have an interview with some very interesting people from a company that is pretty much dominant in our coverage here on the podcast. So stay tuned. There's a little teaser for that. But we've got a great interview with two people from a very, very big company. Very, very big company that may or may not be affected by the election. And so Jason, Wynn, and myself, Mishaal, you're going to be traveling, right? So you're going to miss out. But Jason, Wynn, and myself are going to gather up. We're going to record the show. We're going to have that interview. And then we're going to release it Tuesday night at the same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific as a YouTube premiere. So there'll be no Twitch live stream next week, but there will be a YouTube premiere. So those of you who like to watch it live, you can come over to YouTube. The chat will work. I'll be there. I don't want to speak for Jason or Win, but I'll be there in the chat to chat with everybody. So if your usual tune-in live stream behavior is Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, you're still going to get that. It'll just be a premiere. And then the podcast will release as normal as on audio with no difference. So that's the plan for next week. We hope you enjoy it. That way we don't have to worry about producing a show while we're watching election results come in from the East Coast,
or trying not to watch and being distracted. And let's just say we've done that before a couple of times.
A few times, yeah.
Yep.
I'm happy to not do it again.
Yep.
So hopefully y'all understand, but
so
for the most part,
I think it's a good solution that works out for everybody. I think so.
It's a tradition we can do without.
Yeah, exactly. And we only got to deal with it every 4 years. And sadly, Jason, this is now the 12, 16, 20. This was the fourth presidential election that we're living through in our Android podcasting careers.
Yeah, for first election night that I won't be podcasting distracted.
Yeah,
while it's all happening.
So. Wild. So
yeah.
All right, cool. Well, stay tuned for that next week, and then we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming as you expect and love. With that said, let's get into Android 16. What do you say?
It's almost like Android 16 is about to come out. Like we know, so
it seems like it.
It's an avalanche at this point.
If you had to put a bet right now, is Android 16 going to come out or not? Mishaal, what would you choose?
Oh no, it's totally been canceled.
It's done. We're done. We're done at 15.
Android is over.
They're gonna jump right
throw away all your
20.
plushies, all your figurines. It's over.
I would like to give bonus points to Mishaal for yes-anding that one pretty well. You've been taking improv classes, I can tell. All right, Android 16. Let's hear it.
So Android 16 is, of course, definitely not canceled and actually seems to be quite packed full of new features. Some of the latest things that I found while digging through the latest Android beta, first of all, it looks like Android might be getting some better notifications in terms of how apps can show ongoing notifications. So Google's working on this new API called Rich Ongoing Notifications. And this basically allows them to, or what I think what it'll do is it'll allow them to show these notifications within status bar chips. So if you take like a phone call using the Google phone app, you'll see this chip on the top left that shows you the duration of the call. Or if you're on the Android beta and you do a screen recording, you also have this chip at the top left that you can tap. And what I think Google is going to allow you to do is they'll allow app developers to create their own chips that you can tap, and then it'll open up some kind of dialogue or whatever the app wants to do. So you might think this is similar to Dynamic Island or their whatever they call their live activities on iOS. And yeah, it might have been inspired by that a little bit, but in actuality, Android has had these kind of status bar chips for a long time, actually predating Dynamic Island. So Google expanding these status bar chips beyond, the phone call and the screen recorder to basically let any app do what they want with it would be a great idea. And, potentially you could do things like, show how far away your Uber ride is or how many minutes left until you have to board your flight. I don't know exactly what apps will do or actually if this API will even be open to third-party apps, but it looks like this is something that Google is working on, and hopefully we'll have more details soon.
So when you say Dynamic Island, like when I think of Dynamic Island, yes, the notification stuff is part of that, but I think my mind more thinks about there's a camera there and so all happens around the camera. This isn't necessarily that as much as it just is kind of a chip notification thing. It's less about like obscuring the camera that's there, obviously, but more just about like adding like a notification call out there. Is that right?
For now, but I mean, I don't know for sure if the chip will always be on the top left.
Yeah, well, that's
true. It could be moved
good point.
to the middle, right? It could be just like Dynamic Island if, Google or an OEM wanted to.
Yeah, right. Interesting.
The next interesting change is a update to the quick settings panel in Android 16. So as I mentioned before, Google is working on revamping the UI and the functionality quick settings panel. They're looking to split it into two pages, notifications and quick settings. But what I didn't notice last time is that with this new quick settings panel, Google's also working on letting you resize tiles.
Ooh.
So currently, since Android 12, you always had these big oval pills that took up 2 slots.
Let me correct you on that. You had big old chonky pills.
Big old chonky pills.
Chonkers.
Yeah.
And that's been the case since Android 12. But with Android 16, looks like Google will let you choose whether or not you want those big pills or just the tiny toggles that you used to have in older versions. And this will allow you to have as little as 8 pills, or as little as 8 tiles, which is what you currently have with Android 15. Or you could have as many as 16 of those 1x1 tiles in a single page. And yeah, I think this would be a great change because, you know, quick settings, you kind of want to be able to access them as quickly as possible. So fitting more on a single page could allow you to have more accessible toggles without having to swipe and switch between pages to find the one you want.
Yeah, I actually find myself
that.
not even using the ones in the second page, right? Like I move all my key ones to the first page. So so whether it's, you know, it's airplane mode or whatchamacallit, the what's the one
Like
for
Bluetooth or
not Bluetooth, the one that make your screen change. What is it called?
like
what is that?
Do not
Night
disturb?
mode? Do not disturb, dark mode,
No, what is it?
auto rotate.
Auto rotate. That's the one. Auto rotate.
Make your screen change mode?
Make it a screen change mode. No wonder they want to make it smaller. The hotspot is one I use a lot. So yeah, I put all those in the first screen, and then I don't even look at the other ones.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. I like the interface of that too, kind of like dragging it out. It's very, very analogous to kind of widgets on the home screen. You know, it makes a lot of sense seeing it like that. That would be a feature that would be offered eventually. It's cool.
And I do have to mention that, you know, this is Google's take on Android, and that other OEMs may already have resizable quick settings tiles. For example, Nothing OS 3.0 already has this feature. So this is something that applies mainly to Pixel phones.
And it's interesting to see, is Google paying attention to what the OEMs are doing and making like, ooh, I like that, or is it just coincidence? Right?
I think it's a bit of both. They're both
Probably.
reacting to the market and also, you know, adopting what other OEMs are doing.
Yep.
Speaking of which, another change they're doing that seems to be in reaction to feedback is Google is once again working on making the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth tiles into one-click options. So with Android 12, you had to tap the internet tile, and then you could open a panel where you could toggle Wi-Fi. And Android 14 QPR2, they did the same thing with the Bluetooth, making it 2 taps to toggle Bluetooth on and off. Well, it looks like with Android 16, they're kind of bringing the best of both worlds, where you have this new set of tiles for internet and Bluetooth, where you have around the icon itself. Jason, if you scroll down, keep scrolling down. Okay, right there. If you look at the image on video viewers, where the tile is for internet and the tile for Bluetooth is, now the background around the icon itself is highlighted, indicating that it's a button that you can press. So if you tap on the icon itself, it toggles either Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. And then if you tap outside of that icon where it's filled in, it opens the old panel that you used to have. So you can have both options now. You can toggle it quickly, or you can open the panel.
Hallelujah. Yeah.
And this is another one of those things where I'm saying this kind of applies to Pixel only, because a lot of other manufacturers never got rid of the old mobile data or the Wi-Fi toggle. For example, my Xiaomi phone, that still has the old Wi-Fi and the mobile data toggle. It never added that internet panel in the first place.
Is this Pixel only, or would this be AOSP?
This is AOSP,
yeah.
But the way that they implement the quick settings panel is different across manufacturers.
Sure, yeah.
You don't have the same panel UI or behavior in One UI or HyperOS, for example. This is what we're showing. When I say Android 16, I'm talking about AOSP and also Pixel.
No, what we should do? We should take AOSP and make like an Android faithful OS and just don't do anything. Just leave it as is. And maybe make it green, or like do something, or add the little Android faithful logo on it.
Well, we've already seen what that's like. Just pure AOSP. It's pretty much unusable. I don't know if you saw. There's a Linus Tech Tips actually did a video on this.
Use it.
Nobody uses. You don't want to use AOSP. It's not usable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen,
And lastly,
when we come out with the Android faithful line of phones, You'll see.
And the last change I wanted to highlight is continued work that Google is doing on revamping Do Not Disturb. And previously, I talked about how they are working on supercharging it and turning it into a feature called priority modes. Well, now it looks like they're going to be calling this new feature modes. And as I mentioned before, modes, this is basically a new take on Do Not Disturb mode, where instead of creating a single schedule that you have to toggle on and off or set it to a calendar event, you can create as many custom Do Not Disturb modes as you want with their own names, their own icons, and also toggle them from a quick settings panel or from the settings itself. So, for example, you could create a Do Not Disturb mode when you're meditating, or when you're exercising, or when you're at the movies, or when you're gardening. You know, there's so many different options you can create to customize to your personal habits. And what Google has added in the latest beta is that when you toggle a custom mode, that icon for that mode will show up on your status bar as well as on your AOD and lock screen, so that you know exactly which mode is active at a given time.
Is that the little human head with the...
Yeah, the little meditating icon that I
that's
did.
the
Like I created a mode called meditating.
Got it. So then
And you have
if
40
I've
different
got
icons to pick from.
Yeah, so if I've got like, if I'm a big time golfer and I want a golfing mode, am I going to have to, based on what you know right now, go into the modes thing and then select it? Or will I likely be able to assign the golfing mode as its own tile? That's what I'm wondering.
No, it won't be its own tile, but all your modes will be accessible from the quick settings panel. There's going to be a new tile called modes.
Right,
tap
that's
that,
what I see there.
it opens this dialog. But yeah, you can't have your own tile just for, a specific mode.
Why not? You know what I mean? Like that's one extra step. I don't know. Maybe eventually that will be done. But
maybe eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, it'll have its icon too. Like they have the icons. Like I could totally see that working really well. Just be like, I golf so much. Like I just want to pull down the thing and hit the golf thing and go. Anyways. Not to diminish what you found, Mishaal. I love it. Just thinking about where it's going to go when we're talking about Android 20 or whatever. Cool stuff.
All right, so we're getting closer. When do you think it's going to drop? In all seriousness, though,
Next week.
Next week.
No.
2025.
2025, early 2025. Yeah,
2025.
That's all we got.
We'll see.
That's all we got.
We'll see.
And earlier than normal, right? That's what we know is earlier than
That's the
has
theory.
been.
I think that's the theory. We'll see if it proves out. Yeah.
Versus actually.
But there's an OS that is out, right, Jason?
Yeah, let me clean it a little bit because it was a little smudgy when I looked at it. Yes, so OxygenOS 15 beta is a thing that exists right now. Although you can't install it, most people can't install it quite yet on their OnePlus 12. I do have it running. I know Mishaal has it. Mishaal actually wrote up a really great article on the Android Faithful website. So definitely go and check that out. You'll see the plushie. You'll see all the details of everything going on in this update, of which it's a big update. I also did a video of it on the TechSploder YouTube channel, which is embedded in the article. So you can kind of get the best of both worlds there. But yeah, it's they've made a lot of changes. They've integrated the split notification thing. So if you're on that side, you get that notification. And if you do it on the left-hand side, you get your actual notifications. They integrated, and I'm not going to show off every single feature.
Oh, but Jason, I think you should also mention you can swipe between the two pages when you're in the notifications and quick settings. Swipe left or right.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Piece of cake. Thank you for pointing that out. I didn't realize that. Didn't make it in my video because I didn't realize. They've got this Flux themes thing, so they've got kind of a couple of new features in their theming engine, which essentially allows you to do. Every time I see that, by the way, what does it actually say? Fast.
Wow.
But it kind of looks like fart.
It does look like fart. For our audio listeners, it is a wallpaper with an FA and something and a T, and it's got a character, and it's supposed to say fast, but it looks like fart.
Yeah, it's really interesting because they have these. So that's hilarious. They have these like themes that you can do, but the words like brilliant, keep moving. Game
Oh,
on.
interesting. So the words go, they're
Fast.
they're just really cheesy,
Super cheesy.
sayings that go behind the image. That's interesting.
Yeah, I just don't know why I can't I like that font, but I want to type my own
Right.
word.
Yeah.
I want it to say fart, and I want to be able to do that. But anyways, you can do things like this one, for example, has depth embedded into it, so I could go into my my images and find a photo of my own, which I used, my dog Bronson. This is the image, and then when I import it into it, it actually immediately is able to kind of etch out the cut around Bronson and put him into theme. And then what you end up getting is, if I turn off, this is my always on display, so I get a little image of it. If I wake it up, it kind of grows into this larger thing, and then I unlock and it reveals the rest of the thing. It's just a lot of visual enhancements, I'd say, with the OnePlus, with the OxygenOS 15. Redesigned icons. You're probably not seeing many of those here because I had kind of customized my OnePlus 12 a while back. Open Canvas, which is actually opening up like a split screen and dragging an image from photos to a Gmail message, for example. You can share with an iPhone if you have the right app installed on the iPhone. AI assistant for notes, so you can do a lot of the standard kind of summarization stuff inside of the OnePlus Notes app, if it'll register my button tap. So a lot of AI features, many of them kind of catching up to what others have, but some of them, being legitimately, let's see here. So going into edit and AI editor, and now you've got this whole feature set like AI eraser, which we already had. You can do this detail boost, which is like up-resing up to 4K, which I find interesting because the camera already shoots in high quality. But anyways, if you've got a photo that looks less quality, I suppose you could scale it up. AI reflection eraser and unblur.
Actually, Jason, that AI upscaling thing, like if you notice when you go to crop a photo and you zoom in when you're cropping, you'll see like a little chip that asks you to upscale. So it kind of like always appears when you're cropping.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that chip yet, but I probably have.
Yeah, so if you go to crop, you'll see a little
AI detail boost.
AI detail boost. There you go.
Oh, that's cool. I wish I had seen that. Okay. That makes more sense. I was like, why is this in here? Like I had to go digging through my old photos and find a photo that I took back in 2000 to find something that was kind of out of focus and up-res it. And then you could detail boost and it would bring it up. Okay. That's a great useful feature for that.
Speaking of useful features, Jason, what happens if you press and hold on that little bar at the bottom?
Oh, that circle to search.
What is that?
Sure. It's where you circle things and it searches it. Like it knows that guitar hanging on my wall is the Guild.
Circle to search. I mean, I don't want, let's not distract with circle to search, but I've been using it a lot and it's pretty darn good.
It is.
I'm impressed.
That's why every time circle to search is brought to a new device, we keep talking about it because we love it so much. It's like at this point, it's like, circle to search, but still it's such a great feature, man. So anyways, a lot of stuff coming. Intelligent search, not quite on this update, which if you have a 12, you're going to be able to get the beta installed starting, I think, Thursday it is. 31st.
Yeah, they said the 31st.
And then
the
timeline,
we have the full timeline on the website, and also the full changelog. It's a massive changelog.
It's huge,
which you love to see because so many companies have like bug fixes and improvements. OnePlus posted this enormous changelog for OxygenOS 15. Yeah, and I copied the whole thing and put it on the website.
Yeah, and I mean, people seem pretty excited. I mean, I've gotten a really great response from OnePlus users from the video that I posted, and they're all just really excited to get it. Like, can we get it, our hands on it? And I think it's interesting from the perspective of, OnePlus has really had peaks and valleys in the kind of the appreciation or the energy around the brand. And I think we're out of the valley and coming up again. I think people are starting to get really excited once again about what OnePlus is doing, and they're making some good decisions. And yeah, I really like the update. So
Yeah, they're on a multi-year roll now. Like we have this is like, I mean, geez, remember a couple of years ago we were wondering if they were going to survive, and like they've really, between when they were ahead of the curve on the Open, and now they're doing such a great job with the other devices that are coming out. Now we're waiting on the next version of the Open. It's going to be, I mean, like OnePlus I think is in a very, very great position compared to where it was like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
cool.
Agreed.
Good stuff.
So, there you go.
And I love seeing you guys jam on the website with Jason's video and Mishaal's article, and like that was so cool over on AndroidFaithful.com.
Got to do that more often. That was
A+ teamwork.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Yeah.
Synergy.
So a little bit of news on the carrier front, which I thought was pertinent to a lot of our U.S.-based audience, many of whom I'm assuming are customers of T-Mobile or AT&T or Verizon, one of the three big major carriers. So the FCC apparently is exploring a solution that would make the carriers unlock phones after 60 days of activation. And this is a consumer-friendly approach, very EU-esque now that I think about it, actually, as we dig into it. And so this is being discussed and debated within the Federal Communications Commission. And T-Mobile and AT&T came out saying that this plan should be dropped, claiming that by putting this in place, it will impede their ability to provide cheaper handsets to consumers. Basically T-Mobile said they estimated that for their prepaid customers and customers that are using prepaid phones would see the subsidies related to the cost of the phones reduced 40 to 70%, and impact both its lower and higher end devices, Moto G, Samsung A15, iPhone 12, etc. And they said they quote, a handset unlocking mandate would also leave providers little choice but to limit their handset offers to lower costs and often lesser performing handsets. And so it's a tough challenge because, the carriers obviously want to not unlock the phone because they want to lock you into their service, right? And T-Mobile is getting dinged the most. And there's a great report by John Brodkin over at Ars Technica that I'm referencing here, and goes into a lot of details with it. And Brodkin points out that T-Mobile probably is and disclaimer, I'm a T-Mobile customer. T-Mobile is the most egregious in terms of locking in users for at least a year before they can be unlocked. For example, their prepaid brand Metro by T-Mobile requires from 180 to 365 days before a phone can be unlocked. And it's a tough spot because we want to give consumer choice, and you want to give consumers ability to choose the carrier that they want to do and do what they want, where they want to come with. But clearly these carriers have built a business around getting subsidies for the phones and making the phones cheaper with the agreement that they can get you on their service for longer, right? That's the balance. And this rule runs the risk of upsetting the balance. There was one quote by T-Mobile that that just made me laugh at it because T-Mobile said T-Mobile is passionate about winning customers for life, and explained how its handset unlocking policies greatly benefit our customers. Our policies allow us to deliver access to high-speed mobile broadband on a nationwide 5G network via handsets that are free or heavily discounted off the manufacturer's suggested retail price. T-Mobile's unlocking policies are transparent. There's absolutely no evidence of consumer harm stemming from these policies. So depending on where you land, like I'm a T-Mobile customer, but I'm using unlocked phones. Like I'm not going to T-Mobile to buy my phone and lock in. And I would counter to T-Mobile that if you want to win customers for life, you give them the opportunity to choose and you give them the best service you can do.
Give them the choice. Yeah, I think the choice is the important thing there. I think and I'm not arguing for T-Mobile here, but I do think that it's probably true that if they were forced to be subsidy or lock-in free, that subsidies might actually just go away for the most part.
Yeah.
Similar to what has happened in Canada around the same thing. Then you end up finding yourself, okay, well then I'm paying for my monthly and I'm buying a $900 phone on top of it or whatever. Yeah, it's a hard one. Like I can understand the other side, even though it feels kind of slimy to lock anyone into anything. And I think locking into a contract for a year, I don't like that. But I do also understand why they do it, because there's, the money needs to be paid/made somehow. And yeah, I think those subsidies go away if they're forced to unlock from the get-go, unfortunately.
Yep.
But I mean, I think that would have a positive effect on lowering the price of plans in the U.S.
Yeah,
if
I
they're
would
forced
hope
to
so.
compete with each other instead of locking people into 1 to 2 year contracts.
Yeah, I would certainly hope so. That would be good.
Sure would. So
they're
we'll see how this
they're
all.
Going to find their way to make the money somehow. I guess maybe that's.
But again, just give the best service you can do.
Yeah.
And I understand there's a lot of economics with the cost of the handsets and their ability to discount it. And we've created this community of people who expect to not pay full price and to get all these discounts. And you just find other ways to do the discounts. I don't know. Just find make it work. Give the customers choice. That's my uneducated opinion.
Make it work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Speaking of making things work, we just got a bombshell piece of news right on the eve of towards the end of the Snapdragon Summit last week. And if things don't work out, it could be devastating for the Android flagship market. So, as you're probably familiar, most Android phones and tablets are powered by CPUs that implement the ARM instruction set architecture. This ARM architecture is developed by ARM Holdings, the same British firm behind those Cortex CPUs that you see in Google's Tensor chips, Samsung's Exynos chips, and MediaTek chips. Besides designing and licensing those CPUs to those silicon vendors, ARM also licenses the ARM instruction set itself to other companies like Apple and Qualcomm, who then design their own CPUs that are based on the ARM architecture. So Apple, for example, used its ARM architectural license to develop its custom M series of ARM chips that you find in their MacBooks, their tablets, and so on. While Qualcomm used its license to create the Orion CPU in the Snapdragon X Elite for those Copilot Plus PCs, and more recently the Snapdragon X Elite that we just talked about last episode. However, ARM Holdings is now arguing in court, or actually they've been arguing for a while now, that Qualcomm had no right to create its Orion CPU because they allege that the company did so using intellectual property that ARM alleges could not be legally transferred over to Qualcomm. So for a little bit more background on what's going on here, Qualcomm acquired a startup called Nuvia back in 2021. Nuvia was a startup that was founded by former Apple and Google semiconductor engineers, and they were working on high-performance server CPUs before they were acquired by Qualcomm. Nuvia had its own architectural license before it was acquired, as does Qualcomm have their own license. So the question that ARM is raising in its lawsuit is whether or not all the intellectual property that Nuvia developed using its own license is transferable over to Qualcomm after they acquired it. ARM is alleging this IP is not transferable and that Qualcomm is violating its architectural license. So what ARM is doing as part of this negotiating process is they have pulled the nuclear option on Qualcomm. And according to Bloomberg, they have canceled Qualcomm's architectural license. So why is this a big deal? Well, assuming they don't just settle and Qualcomm doesn't just pay ARM a huge load of money, in the worst case scenario, ARM gets an injunction against Qualcomm and forces them to scrap all designs that were developed based on Nuvia IP. It could be devastating. So if that includes the first-gen Orion CPU, as well as the second-gen Orion CPU, which are found in the Snapdragon X Elite and the 8 Elite respectively, then at worst, Qualcomm could be forced to stop importing or selling these chips in the jurisdictions that ARM wins in. That would effectively kill the launch of a whole bunch of flagship Copilot Plus Windows PCs, as well as a whole bunch of upcoming Android flagship phones. It would be an absolute disaster for the Android market. Because you can't just swap out something as critical as a system on chip overnight, especially not something that's so dramatically different generationally from its previous designs. So we don't know if that's going to happen because ARM has given Qualcomm its obligatory 60 days notice before canceling the license. So we'll have to wait to see what happens. A lot of observers in the industry think that ARM is doing this just to get as much money as it can from Qualcomm by forcing them to renegotiate their license. And the consensus seems to be that this is a pretty short-sighted move by ARM, because it's only just going to spook everyone away from ARM and potentially move them towards adopting RISC-V, which is a more open instruction set that a lot of companies are starting to gravitate towards.
It's wild. Whenever the company goes the nuclear option, you got to wonder who is advising them to be like, okay, this is, like, it's gotten to such a point that this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brutal. And it's so weird because I was actually talking about this story to a coworker of mine whose daughter works for ARM. And he was saying, he's like, yeah, it's like, it's really kind of weird because it seems like Qualcomm's their biggest customer. So like you're having a very cursory knowledge of the situation, and it's just like, yeah, no, it definitely seems like a weird thing to do. So
it definitely feels a bit petty. Like,
yeah,
like it's not just like two business conglomerates. It definitely feels like they hate Qualcomm,
right?
Because they dropped this news on the second day of Snapdragon Summit. There was no way it's coincidental timing.
It was definitely focused. Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
man, that's wild.
Interesting.
All right. Well, there it is. So we'll stay tuned to see what 30 or 60 days notice. What did they give?
60 days.
60 days. All right. So we'll see what happens in the next 2 months.
Gotta love a good beef.
Yeah, indeed.
And of course, both of them had their statements. They called each other allegations baseless. Extorting. The usual jazz. You can read the statements and the more details on the Bloomberg article. They included both statements from Qualcomm and from ARM.
Right. Wild. Gotta love a good beef, as Jason says. So, but what we love here at All About Android is our supporters, and we thank everybody who supports. Oh, I said All About Android. Oh my God, who supports Android Faithful? Wow, it's been a while since the muscle memory kicked in there.
It happens. Hey, look, and All About Android was like a quarter of my lifetime. So
exactly,
it's
hard to say. It's hard to. I'm surprised that I don't make that mistake more often.
Totally.
But we do love our supporters here at Android Faithful because you are all awesome. And we want to thank everybody for supporting us either by going to AndroidFaithful.com and lending your support there, or going to Patreon.com/AndroidFaithful. Either way, you guys are all awesome. Want to give a quick shout out to a couple of our patrons who have been supporting us over on Patreon. Nancy Brodsky, Dawn and Greg Tripp, Roberto Garcia, DJ Lookup, who I want to hang out with DJ Lookup, and Christopher Cheney. I want to thank all 6 of you this week, actually, for supporting All About Android Faithful over at patreon.com/Android Faithful. And when you go to patreon.com/Android Faithful, you sign up, you get access to the ad-free version of the podcast. You get some cool merch. We got stickers. We got t-shirts, fun stuff. And also, lately, we've been running the full interviews from DroidCon. Those have all been dropping one after another. We hope everyone's been enjoying watching those. You can watch those on Patreon before they go wide on YouTube. You get about a week's access to that before they go live, and that's a little value we want to give you. It's value for value, as they say. So we thank you all. And those patrons also can vote every week for a news story for us to talk on the show. And that news story is always accompanied these days by a little cute little bug droid submitted by one of you, the audience, the listening audience. This week we want to thank John Piotr for submitting a Halloween-themed bug droid.
Oh, it's so cute.
Which is
Look at it.
A bug droid with a Dracula-like vampire cape and like the little points coming up out of it, with just some horrifying fangs as he's biting into an apple. I wonder what that.
I mean, there's like apple
is.
blood dripping down from his lips.
It's pretty brutal.
His or her
lips.
lips.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. So great job, John. Great job on everybody who sent in the Halloween themed bug droids, and everyone else in the audience. Email contact@androidfaithful.com. Send in your bug droids. We got Thanksgiving coming up. We've got Christmas coming up. We've got Hanukkah coming up. We've got Kwanzaa coming up. We've got New Year's coming up. There's lots of bug droid themed images that I want you to send in to us because they make me laugh.
Lots of opportunity.
Yeah. So Thank you, everybody. And thank you, John, again, for just sending that in. And that's going to get to the patron pick. Every week, patrons can vote on a story for us to discuss. This week, we had some cool stories to talk about. The one that came in last, was the one that I was excited for, but nobody voted for, was durability test show Huawei's trifold smartphone is delicate, as expected.
Yeah.
That came in third. The story that came in second was Google Calendar looks like it's swallowing up the Tasks app. And the winning story that we're going to talk about here was written by none other than that guy sitting right across from me, Mr. Mishaal. And this article over at Android Authority about here's how Google is making it easier for Android devices to get 7 years of updates. Of course, that one. I feel like, Mishaal, we stacked the deck with this one. But tell us, how is Android devices going to get 7 years of updates? Do pray tell, sir.
Well, I swear we didn't stack the deck. Like I had this originally
seems
in
like
the
it was
news
stacked.
block, but then I didn't want to fully cut it, so I'm like, I'll just throw it in the Patreon. But y'all still voted for it, Y'all picked this one.
Stack the deck.
So what is Google doing to make it easier? So the thing is, a lot of updates you may have heard a lot of times that OEMs kind of blame silicon vendors like Qualcomm, like MediaTek for basically determining how long they can update the devices for, because you need support from the silicon vendor to issue critical security updates or to update the underlying vendor software so that you can meet new requirements in Android versions that they want to update to. Google wanted to solve this problem, so a couple of years ago, they quietly created a program called Google Requirements Freeze, where basically they say that, okay, if a silicon vendor like Qualcomm releases a new chip, you are allowed to opt into this program and freeze your vendor software so that you don't have to update it in order to receive certification for future releases. So, for example, the first chipset in this program was the Snapdragon 888. That was released with support for Android 11. So OEMs like, say, OnePlus or like Xiaomi, who wanted to build phones with the Snapdragon 888, they could release an Android 11 OS update using the Android 11 vendor software that Qualcomm originally shipped with. Then they could reuse that Android 11 vendor software, but then ship an Android 12 update on top of it. They could reuse that Android 11 vendor software again and ship an Android 13 software update on top. Then finally, they could reuse that Android 11 vendor software for a third time and ship Android 14 on top of it. That was the extent of what Google Requirements Freeze covered. Google allowed this vendor software to be reused for 3-letter upgrades on top of the base OS version that the silicon, that the system on chip supported. Now Google is extending this GRF program with a new program called Longevity GRF that basically takes the same principle of reusing the vendor software, but allowing it to be reused for 7-letter upgrades. So let's say, for example, you launch the Snapdragon 8 Elite, for example. That chipset is launching with vendor support for Android 15. OEMs that ship devices with this Snapdragon 8 Elite can reuse that same vendor software for Android 16, Android 17, Android 18, Android 19, 20, 21, and 22. For 7-letter upgrades, they can reuse the same vendor software that Qualcomm originally shipped that was supported Android 15 features. And that just simplifies things for OEMs as well as Qualcomm, because they don't have to do as much work to update their chipset software, and they don't have to support nearly as many combinations of OS and vendor software anymore. It's not going to guarantee that phones that are using chipsets under this program will actually get 7 years of updates. Like, that doesn't mean that every phone with the 8 Elite is going to get 7 years of updates. No, that's still going to be determined by how much work and how much effort the OEM actually puts in, because it still costs a lot of money to develop, port, test, certify, etc. all these updates. But it's going to make it less expensive to do these updates, which in turn should help push along longer software support life cycles on devices.
Okay.
It's a very complicated topic when you get into the nitty gritty. Like, yeah. I made these graphs that kind of explain what's going on. But yeah, if you want to understand how it works, it's a tough thing to explain. But that's the TLDR. That's the high level of what this Longevity GRF and this GRF program are about.
Cool.
This is how Android updates work under the hood.
Yeah, right. Interesting. All right.
Fascinating. Well, there it is. There's the roadmap to how you get 7 years of updates. Thank you, Mishaal, for that. That's good. And thank you, everybody on Patreon, for voting for this story and getting a little bit of getting schooled on updates. And I like the longevity curve in there. That was the visuals were nice. That was a good job. So cool. So go to patreon.com/AndroidFaithful, sign up there. And with that, we're going to pause for a moment and then get into hardware. And in the world of hardware, it is Leakapalooza, everybody. Sound the alarm, because I know it was rumored that the Pixel 10 would feature a new Tensor chip in the device itself. It was rumored that Google was going to be designing it themselves and kind of giving the Samsung chip partnership kind of the old heave-ho. But our friends over at Android Authority received a massive leak from Google's G-Chips division, where they got their hands on some credible documents that kind of shed some light on what's going on with the Tensor G5. And it's pretty interesting when you think about it. Confirmed for the Pixel 10. And as we go through it, and Mishaal, I'm sure you're gonna correct me on this as we go through it, or whatever. But from a very high level, what people need to understand. So the Pixel 9 features the Tensor G4, which in the CPU side of things had what an upgraded what they call a CPU cluster, right? And basically it made it marginally faster, slightly faster. Android Authority's test made it 6% faster in multi-core tests than the previous phones. And the assumption was that Google dropped a core to reduce the power usage, which didn't give a ton of performance improvements. Well, the Tensor G5 is going to upgrade that CPU cluster again, but in a head-scratching kind of way. Back to our friends ARM, from our previous story about ARM and Qualcomm, Google is going to be keeping the same single ARM Cortex X4 primary core, which made the folks at Android Authority scratch their heads because there's a new ARM Cortex X925 that promises improvements. But they, in addition to keeping with the Cortex X4, they're shifting the core clusters around again. And so the mid cluster has 5 Cortex A725 cores instead of 3 Cortex A724 on the Tensor G4. And the little cluster has shrunk down to 2 Cortex A520 cores. Now, this is all just the structure of the cores of the chip themselves. It's not going to tell what the performance is going to be, but the fact that they're using the ARM Cortex core that's already out there and not the new and improved ones, is already starting off on a disappointing foot. Additionally, the Tensor G5 is going to have a new GPU. The Tensor G5 GPU comes from Imagination Technologies, and it's called the DXT 481536, running at 1.1 gigahertz. And ultimately, we don't know. The Android Authority didn't know much from these docs, and we don't know much about these about this GPU. But they were able to glean the fact that it comes with ray tracing support, which is going to be new to Google chips, which usually isn't aligned for gamer phones, where ray tracing is used. And then the other detail that came apart was support for GPU virtualization, which basically allows the use of accelerated graphics in a virtual machine. And so that's pretty much a kind of a focused improvement on the graphics capabilities of a device using this chip. And then surprisingly, the Tensor G5, according to Android Authority, had modest improvements for AI. We assume that AI would be driving a lot of design, but it looks like they're, it's kind of modestly improved here compared to the Tensor G4. So Jason, Mishaal, after seeing this report, what are your thoughts around the G5? Is it like sad trombone, or is it just like, I don't know anything about these cores, we'll see when the phone comes out, or what? Do we think these are head scratching decisions? What do you think?
I mean, I think we just saw the Snapdragon 8 Elite at Snapdragon Summit. Like, Qualcomm was very proud about the performance scores of its new 8 Elite and its new custom Orion CPU. I don't think we're going to see any of that when Google announces Tensor G5, just because, they're using admittedly last generation CPUs. But they're probably going to still build a lot of really impressive AI driven features. And I think we're going to see a lot of that emphasis when they announce this chipset. It's going to be all about the features that it enables.
Well, that's a very good point, because Jason, if you could pop over to the article, Google Pixel 10 and 11 are potentially getting new camera and AI tricks from Android Authority. The second article there. In addition to those leaks, it indicated that the Pixel 10 and the Pixel 11 are going to get a bunch of camera improvements and AI improvements. So the camera improvements would be support for 4K 60 frame per second HDR video, 100x zoom, an upgrade to the cinematic blur feature. Yeah, and new ultra low light video mode for capturing video in very dim lighting. And then, of course, all the AI, machine learning, always on features related to health monitoring, activity tracking, and things like that. So those could be indicators of the kind of features they would be getting from this chipset and pushing the limits for that. Additionally, the Pixel, one leak about the Pixel 11. Back up an article, Jason. Sorry, is that the Pixel 11 is looking to add a under the display infrared camera. Which would, basically give a more secure and better face unlock, which would address the, kind of the issues with the current face authentication system. And the Tensor G6 chip would support this new IR camera, not the G5. So that's why it would be aligned with the Pixel 11. So,
which was
and the issues you mentioned are not really security related, because Google says it's secure enough for banking applications, right? But more the fact that it doesn't work under low light conditions very well.
Right.
It's not
Which
as
limits the
resilient.
ability to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then the last bit of this leak was the fact that the Google Pixel Watch 5 might be getting a custom version of the Tensor chip in 2026 for the Watch 5. So in 2 generations from where we are now. And this NPT chip, oddly, which is the abbreviation of my town, will use older CPU cores, and basically, trying to enhance the various smart features, and I'm sure AI and things like that we're going to see in future generations of the Pixel Watch. So, Google going their own way with their Tensor chip design. We'll see what happens with it. So
NPT,
NPT
Newport
stands
Beach.
for that is not where I live. I don't live in Newport Beach, but I live in a town that has an NP and T in it. So, yeah. Fun times.
I mean, it's about, like, I wondered at what point would Google, finally kind of start bringing its Tensor production into the wearable, its wearable efforts. So, not surprised
they
to see
kind
it.
of did with the Pixel Buds Pro 2, right?
Right.
That
Well,
has
that's
the Tensor
true.
A1.
Yeah, I guess I was
That's
thinking
I guess
more-
that's technically the hearable category, which
Yeah,
I think is a totally a made up term.
So anyway, that was a big leaky peaky that Android Authority got with this leak. I can imagine
Indeed,
somebody in the G Chips division had a very bad day. So bummer.
Yeah.
Sorry that we're talking about it now, Google. Sorry. Anyway, you love us anyway. We love you. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk more about Google.
Talk more about Google products. Yeah.
more Google rumors.
Android headlines. Yeah, they got a bunch of exclusives on the upcoming Google Pixel 9. And according to them, they did a comparison on how the Pixel 9 stacks up to the Pixel 9 and the Pixel 9 Pro. And according to their sources, the Pixel 9a will have the same screen size as the 9 and 9 Pro at 6.3 inches, but it'll actually be 2 millimeters taller and about 1 millimeter wider, which they believe is due to the fact that the 9a will likely have larger bezels. In terms of memory capacity, the 9A will only have 8 gigabytes of RAM versus 12 gigabytes in the 9. But it will have a larger battery, about 5,000 milliamp hour according to Android headlines, which is bigger than the 4650 milliamp hour battery in the 9 and 9 Pro. It won't charge as fast. On the other hand, it'll only have 18 watt wire charging and 7.5 watt wireless charging. On the other hand, it'll have a lot of the similar specs like the Tensor G4 processor, starting storage of 128, but going up to 256 gigabytes of storage, a dual camera setup consisting of a 48 megapixel wide plus a 13 megapixel ultra wide angle, and then a 13 megapixel front facing camera, an IP68 dust and water rating, and according to Android headlines, it'll cost $499 in the US, and it'll launch in the middle of March 2025.
So keeping the pricing of the A series from last year. from the previous one. So that's good. Kind of bracing myself for 550. You know, it's like every year going up.
Seems
$50.
inevitable, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
totally. But okay, cool. I'm interested in seeing kind of the design, the like flattened, kind of camera bump thing. It
I'm so confused. Just when I fell in love with the camera bump, they're flattening it. It's just like so then the question is like, is the 9A an indicator of what the 10 will look like, or is it an outlier? Right?
I don't know, because I mean, you still need. I mean, the camera bumps, they exist because you need that space, right? For these cameras,
right? Because of all the components and things like that. Yeah.
And so I don't know that the trend is that they can go away unless they're doing some funky periscope thing in there that doesn't take up as much.
Oh, that'd be so cool if the whole camera unit went like zoomed out, like that would be so
periscope
neat.
thing, but that would be cool. That'd be interesting.
I mean, we definitely don't have a periscope camera on the 9A though.
Right? Yeah.
No, definitely not.
What if the Pixel 10 was thicker? Like, screw the thin phones. We're going thicker, right? We're going
do the exact opposite of Apple and everyone else.
Oh, I love it. Listen, we're getting rid of Android. We're stopping at 15, and we're making the phones thicker. Take that, DOJ.
Could happen.
It could happen. So
you can't break up Android if it doesn't exist anymore.
Right. Exactly. Oh, 2 points for Mishaal tonight. Mishaal, you're on a roll. I love it. Very cool.
All right. Well, I've apparently landed firmly on the OnePlus beat.
Seriously, you're like Mr. OnePlus over there.
Because now I've got more OnePlus news. OnePlus 13 set to be fully announced this week. October 31st is the announcement. Primarily, as we talked about last week on the show, the OnePlus 13 is going to be targeting China right out of the gate. And then a couple of months down the line, we'll start to see it in the US, which is kind of OnePlus's game plan or strategy in the past, and with this again. But nonetheless, more details coming out courtesy of the company at this point. It's one of those things where it's like, why do you have the announcement? But like, we already know everything and you've been confirming everything. More details coming out. OnePlus's drip feeding specs leading up to it. Confirmation of the 6,000 milliamp hour battery. The OnePlus 12, by the way, has 5,400 milliamp hours. So this is a big step up. Also confirmed 100 watt wired charging, 50 watt wireless charging, though not a Qi 2 charger is my understanding. Instead, it's a magnetic charging system via a case. Apparently OnePlus has a smattering of those cases already on offer, along with a 50 watt charging accessory, also a 5,000 milliamp hour magnetic power bank, which OnePlus, by the way, says also works with the iPhone, just for those of you who are interested. But yeah, 6,000 milliamp hours. Sorry, I can't like talk and flip through this stuff at the same time. But so you can see kind of, this is all promotional stuff leading up to the event, and some of the cases and the power accessories and everything.
I like that wood paneled one.
Yeah, there you go.
There's a phone. It looks as if there's a wood grain backing type thing.
That's so funny. I have an old OnePlus phone. God, it's probably like a 3 or a 4, or it's probably a 3. Anyways, the case that OnePlus sent me when they sent me that phone is also a wood paneling phone. I
remember that.
Only have it top of mind because I saw it just the other day. For the video.
You remember their like sandstone back panels from like their original?
Yeah, the original has that.
Those are so good.
The rough sand.
Felt so good in hand. Yeah.
Totally. I busted that out the other day too. That I feel like the OnePlus One. That's a legacy phone right there.
Yeah.
It is confirmed the OnePlus 13 to be both. It says IP68 and IP69. Maybe it's my misunderstanding, but I would just imagine if you're IP69 that you're automatically IP68. Am I wrong?
I'm pretty sure, yeah, because it's like the numbers determine like the level of dust and water resistance.
Is one part of the
higher
phone,
number?
Is one part of the phone 68 and one part is 69? Like, is it yeah?
Oh yeah, I don't know why it says both.
Or is it different regions get different water protection?
I don't
Or
think
you
that
know
makes
what I-
sense either.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know that I've ever seen that before. We're both IP68 and IP69 certified. But there you go.
Oh, wait a minute. No. So IP68 is water and IP69 is dust.
I thought that the 6.
Yeah, the individual numbers represent
the
dust
individual
or water
numbers
respectively.
represent dust and water, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, 69 is high pressure water. So here we go. IP68 versus IP69.
Same dust rating.
Here we go. While both IP68 and 69 offer production distinct differences, water ingress protection, IP68 devices can withstand continuous immersion beyond 1 meter, making them ideal for underwater applications. On the other hand, IP69 devices are designed to endure high-pressure water jets and steam cleaning and may not be suitable for prolonged submersion. But what if you're both? From an intended use, IP68 rated devices are found in outdoor lighting and various industrial applications. IP69 is commonly used in environments that require frequent intense cleaning. Fascinating.
Interesting. So weird that I feel like I've never seen this before.
So you can be IP68 and 69. So 68 is the water submersion, and 69 is high pressure jets and dust and solids and things like that. So
interesting. All right. Yeah. Well, that's yeah. I've just never seen that before. That I remember anyways. OnePlus also confirmed a new bionic vibration motor turbo is what it's called, all caps. That's quite the name for a haptic system. But
sounds like something Apple would name name on their product.
Totally agree. But hey, I love a good haptic system.
Oh,
that's like a phone with.
We gotta feel it to believe it.
Yeah, yeah, totally. With and you only know it if you've had really weak ones that like you can literally feel the motor like rotating inside. It sucks. 72 types of vibration feedback, by the way, for this thing. Optical fingerprint sensor goes bye-bye. Hello, ultrasonic. So, they've been forever on the optical train, and they've also had a really fast system. So I'll be curious. I think ultrasonic fingerprint sensors have come a long way since, the early days when you could really tell the difference. So yeah, that makes sense. And then two features, glove touch and rain touch, which I guess means that if you're wearing a glove, you can still operate the touch screen. And if you're in the rain, it's not going to throw off the touch screen.
I mean, that's important. That's drives me crazy when it's raining. I can't use my phone.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Or wearing gloves. You have to have a certain type of glove in order to use the phone.
Yep.
And then finally, the OnePlus Open 2, not likely to come out on Thursday. I'm not going to say that it's not going to because I don't actually know, but highly unlikely that we are going to see the OnePlus Open 2 for probably many months at this point. But rumors suggesting slimmer design, probably saw that coming. Larger battery, probably saw that coming. 5,700 milliamps up from 4,805. So that's a big jump. How do you get the larger battery and the slimmer design? I don't know. They get creative. Possibly also wireless charging. Do any of the major foldables have wireless charging right now?
Yeah, I think a few do.
Okay.
Samsung is a notable one.
Doesn't the Pixel Fold 2 has wireless? Yeah, but it's weird. The whole thing we did the whole thing about the offsetness and how to hack.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I can remember. Okay. So possibly wireless charging, which the OnePlus Open 1 did not have. Improved cameras, a triple 50 megapixel camera array on the back, Hasselblad tuned, and running the Snapdragon 8 Elite. That's
just like the OnePlus 13, right? Because I don't think we mentioned that.
Oh yeah. The OnePlus 13, yes, also
the 8 Elite.
The 8 Elite, yep. Indeed. So there you go. We've now spoiled the event for you. If you were going to stay up late or wake up early to watch the event,
OnePlus spoiled the event for you. We just regurgitated what they told us.
Yeah.
We're just here reporting on the spoiling. We're not doing the spoiling. So
we're assisting. We're giving an assist on the spoilage.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Any more hardware to talk about?
Yeah, we got some more phones that are powered by the Snapdragon 8 Elite.
More.
This time coming from Xiaomi, who unveiled the Xiaomi 15 and 15 Pro in China. So both these phones run on the Snapdragon 8 Elite, have Android 15 based HyperOS 2, up to 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5X RAM, 1 terabyte of UFS 4.0 storage, or up to 1 terabyte, and also an ultrasonic under-display fingerprint scanner, so no more optical sensor there. IP68 rating, but no IP69 rating, apparently. And also, both have Xiaomi's Dragon Crystal Glass for protection, instead of something like Corning Gorilla Glass. The regular Xiaomi 15 has a 6.36-inch OLED screen with a peak brightness of 3200 nits. So I should say that these like insanely high nit figures that you always hear about is not the full screen peak brightness. It's like it's a localized peak brightness. But like the other devices that we just talked about, the Xiaomi 15 also has a very large battery at 5400 milliamp hours, which is a big upgrade from the last generation Xiaomi 14 at 4610 milliamp hour. You can top that battery off with 90-watt wired hypercharge or 50-watt wireless hypercharging, so incredibly fast charging speeds. And you can also, just like the OnePlus 13, magnetically charge the Xiaomi 15. But also like the OnePlus 13, you need a case to do so. But fortunately, Xiaomi is also offering a couple of other magnetic accessories, like a cooling fan that you can slap onto your phone to keep it cool during gaming sessions. On the back, the Xiaomi 15 has triple rear cameras, all with Leica lenses. It has a 50-megapixel Light Fusion 900 sensor, plus a 50-megapixel 2.6x telephoto camera, and finally a 50-megapixel ultra-wide-angle camera. The Xiaomi 15 Pro is very similar to the 15, except that it has a larger 6100 milliamp hour battery, a bigger 6.73-inch OLED screen, and a better telephoto camera with 5x optical zoom. So in terms of pricing and availability, we only know the prices for the China market, and it's kind of useless to convert that because it never translates one-to-one for global markets. So we'll have to wait for Xiaomi to actually unveil these devices. We don't know when. Potentially Mobile World Congress, I think, is usually when they usually talk about their devices. And when they do, they might also unveil a Xiaomi 15 Ultra because, you know, they also tend to launch an Ultra phone in the Xiaomi lineup. But they didn't announce that today. And we don't know if they're going to bring any of the exclusive back coverings that they announced in the China market, such as the Diamond Edition with its crocodile grain-like leather back, or the Custom Edition where they give you 20 different color options to choose from. We don't know if they're going to bring those outside of China.
Crocodile or Mocodile?
Good question. The hard-hitting questions there.
Yeah. All that other stuff, yeah, fine, whatever. Crocodile or Mocodile, really.
Yeah.
If Mateo was here, he'd ask that question.
Yeah.
I'm just doing him a favor.
Someone wrote in asking for Mateo, by the way. We need to book him.
Oh, we need to have Mateo on.
Yeah, we should reach out to Mateo and get him
All right.
on. Somebody, yeah,
I will
we
do
should
that.
do that. Yeah.
I'll do that.
Cool. All right. Well, good stuff on the hardware. All right. Well, we still got more show. It's another extended show. Even though we're done with our Joy-Con interviews, we do have another interview for you. But first, we have a couple of app news.
We are interview crazy.
We are. But,
yes. Okay. So this is not going to take a huge amount of time because we do want to get to the interview. But Google Photos getting some changes this week. This was news that dropped last week that's saying sometime this week, Google Photos is going to start including information in the details section about AI usage. So you'll be able to find a little part of the section that has AI info. So Magic Editor, Magic Eraser, Zoom Enhance will already actually include IPTC metadata in order to identify generative AI usage. Now Google is going to be including that information in this info section for, all images that run through it. So if it recognizes that metadata, it's going to publish that information here. Credit edited with Google AI, digital source type edited using generative AI, that sort of thing. That's also going to call out when an image is made up of a composite of multiple images. So when you think of features like Best Take or Add Me, they kind of fall into that category. So Many different facets of Google's business, and a lot of big tech right now are kind of working to build this feature set in to identify AI generated content. This is just the next phase of that for Google. Google Photos.
Cool.
Coming soon.
And then over in the productivity side of the world, I know a lot of you love Notion, and I've used it here and there, but a couple of months ago, Notion came out with a calendar app that I have embraced and have really enjoyed using. Well, now they announced that they've got a mail app in development, and they're going to be launching it in early 2025 across Android, iOS, and desktop. And you can go to their website and sign up to be notified when it comes out. So if you're a big fan of Notion and the way they approach productivity, and you're open to a new mail client, you might want to check it out. There's some details about exactly how they're approaching it. They say they're going to smooth away all the little annoyances and use AI and all that fun stuff. So go to Notion's website and sign up to get notified when it comes out. And of course, I'll be checking it out when it releases, and we'll do a review of it here on the show in early 2025. So
there we go.
Very cool. So that's going to wrap it up for apps. And like we mentioned, we got another interview coming up after this quick break. And so, Mishaal, tell us about Skylo.
Yeah, Skylo, if you aren't aware, is actually the service provider that is behind the satellite service for the Google Pixel 9, which, Google announced that with the Pixel 9 series, in the US at least, you have access to emergency SOS support for 2 years. So, if you're in an area without mobile data at all or any cellular network connectivity at all, you can access these non-terrestrial network servers from Skylo in order to send emergency SOS to, Garmin and potentially get support, even if you're in a very remote area. So we wanted to interview and talk to the people behind this technology, on the back end, providing the backbone of this emergency SOS feature for the Pixel 9, and ask them, how does it work? Do you need special hardware to make it work? What are some things people should know about in order to actually implement this kind of technology on Android devices like the Pixel 9 series? So we talked to their CTO to learn more about, what they do and, if there's anything interesting we should be looking out for.
Yeah, really fascinating stuff. It was really cool to go under the hood of how all the stuff works and what the approach is to it. So with that, let's listen to the interview. Me and Mishaal had a great time chatting with him. And we're here. Mishaal and I are very excited to be here with Andrew Nuttall from Skylo, co-founder and CTO. Andrew, you've got a great background, and you got a PhD in aeronautics and you're in mechanical engineering. You're much smarter than we are. It's great to meet you. Welcome to Android Faithful.
Excellent. Thanks so much for having me, guys. Very happy to be here.
So we'd love it if you could kind of tell us a little bit about Skylo and your guys' origin story. Like, how did you get to this point today?
Yeah, so Skylo fundamentally is another mobile network operator. You should think about us very similarly to how you might think about an AT&T or Verizon, but perhaps with two major differences. Number one, perhaps we're a little bit smaller in scale than some of those organizations, not quite the same size as a Verizon or an AT&T. But the second and also notable piece is our network comes from space as opposed to coming from the horizon. And so, as an AT&T or Verizon customer, you're perhaps connecting to a cell tower that's down the block on the local cell tower on a building, etc. But for Skylo's network, you're connecting through satellite, fundamentally using the same technology, same infrastructure. But that's how you should think about us: a mobile network carrier, but from space as opposed to from the ground. And we got into this segment maybe 7 years, 8 years ago now at this point. And, we were a bunch of folks coming at it from the satellite background. And, I recall looking at some of the various satellite technologies at the time and looking at these, huge $1,000 boxes or $1,000 modems, these big, 3-foot wide antennas. And I remember looking at one that was designed for an IoT solution. An IoT device is a $5 sensor or whatever. And it was supposed to be paired with this $1,000 piece of equipment and this huge antenna. And we looked at that and said, something's not right here. There must be an opportunity. And so we ended up exploring that a little bit more, and ultimately, came to the conclusion that, the best gift that we could do for satellite here is find a way to bring satellite into that cellular marketplace and that cellular ecosystem So it has the scale and the efficiency to be able to be much more accessible, but then also bring that capability to a much larger audience base. And so that's a little bit of who we are and how we got into it, perhaps.
Very cool.
So on your website, you describe yourself as a non-terrestrial network service provider, and
Yeah.
I'm assuming that non-terrestrial just basically literally means your service is provided not on Earth, as in like provided through satellites orbiting Earth, right?
Yeah,
That's where that
we're out of this.
technical term
We're out of
comes
this world.
Yeah, out of this
No,
world.
but there's a few different technologies that go into that non-terrestrial network designator. So, satellite is perhaps the biggest one and the most well-known one at this moment. But there are other technologies like high-altitude platforms. I think you may recall like Google Loon a few years ago, or some of these higher altitude platforms. So NTN, or non-terrestrial networks, is meant to be an all-encompassing term. But I think in reality, one of the biggest pushes right now is around satellite.
Interesting. And you mentioned that you founded this company, or this company has been around for a couple of years now. And one of the things that I have been following for a while is that there have been other attempts to bring satellite connectivity to smartphones. And on your website in particular, you mentioned that Skylo is a standards-based NTN, and that in comparison to, say, first-gen solutions from a company that we've talked about before on the show, Iridium, that you leverage, quote, existing off-the-shelf cellular hardware to deliver satellite connectivity. Is that really the case? Like, do modern smartphones not need any additional hardware? Or if they do, what hardware do they need to communicate to satellites?
Yeah. So I think you raise a very important point and also a very important nuance that sometimes gets lost. And I wanted to just double-click on that for a moment with you here. So you mentioned as an example, talking about Skylo connecting phones over satellites or other assets over satellite. But the interesting thing is, there's nothing new about phones connecting over satellite as an example. Phones have been connecting over satellite for the last 30 or 40 years. But I think, the odds are, if you ask the average person, have they ever owned a satellite phone? The answer is going to be no, right? Because they've been these very expensive, very inaccessible pieces of equipment and services, etc. And so the real mission of Skylo is not necessarily to connect phones over satellite, but it's that piece I referenced earlier, specifically around ecosystem convergence, and through doing so to make satellite so much more accessible so that, a day from now, a year from now, when I ask you guys or anyone on the street, hey, have you used a satellite phone? The answer is, well, yeah, I have one in my pocket right now because it's the same phone that I use. And, standards-based is a big part of that. Because again, there are many different ways you could design an excellent satellite phone, but by designing an excellent satellite phone, then you've designed a satellite phone. And really the objective is to produce a hybrid connectivity phone or a cellular phone, as an example, that just happens to work over satellite. And so standards-based is incredibly important because, A, that's probably the entry point into the cellular ecosystem. And so, cellular is this huge behemoth of an ecosystem that has innumerable different players, different market segments, from chipsets to module manufacturers, device manufacturers, mobile network operators, test. It's a huge space. And, with the magnitude of that, they've been able to do wonderful things like expand coverage, expand accessibility, really drive down cost, all these wonderful things. But when you have such a magnitude of different players and scale, you got to find a way to get everyone organized. And so those standards are a way to get yourself into that ecosystem, but then help move with the ecosystem. And so being standards-based is what allows us to converge the ecosystems as opposed to making a really good satellite phone, as an example. It allows us to take satellite and bring it into cellular, and that's a key factor.
I wanted to follow up a bit on the ecosystem aspect. And as you know, you are basically the cellular network provider for satellite connectivity, but to actually make that useful, to actually bring that to consumers, involves partnerships with companies like Google on the Pixel 9 with their emergency SOS feature, and Qualcomm on the Snapdragon X80 chipset. I wanted to ask you a bit about how those partnerships actually came about. Like, were they interested in working with you because of your standards-based approach? And if so, can you tell us about why that approach is so desirable?
Yeah. So, if you think about, again, that massive ecosystem or that mass of different players, our approach has always been to start at the top of the waterfall or start at the entrance point to the supply chain. And so first and foremost, our partnerships have been focused around chipset manufacturers because, a chip goes into a module goes into a device a device goes into a consumer's hands and then they end up buying a subscription from a network operator. And so first and foremost, we've been focused on these chipset partners, and we've got a slew of wonderful partners from organizations like Qualcomm, Samsung LSI, MediaTek, Sony, etc. And so we've been focused with them to enable this technology. And I think there's a few things that have happened. Thing number one, Apple has done the world a favor by making satellite a known term to the industry, making satellite familiar to the ecosystem, identifying the value that it can help bring, and most importantly, communicating the value that it can help bring. And so that opportunity has been enabled and opened up by them a little bit, or made more publicly aware. And then when it comes to working as an example with the chipset side, one of the big things that is of interest is how can we deliver a really powerful user experience? How do we deliver a really cost-effective user experience? And so specifically designing these technologies for satellite, doing so in a way which brings the ecosystem along, in which there can be winners across all the different market segments. That's been a big part for us. And we work with Qualcomm together, not just across Snapdragon, we've worked with them across IoT, many other segments. And so they've really been motivated that, hey, this is a unique market segment, it provides a lot of value. We can do so in a way which allows our ecosystem to come with us. And by designing for it and doing it within the 3GPP context, we can deliver a really meaningful solution. And a lot of that same mantra can be applied to the Pixel case here again, recognizing the value that consumers have. And if you think about, as an example, some of the recent events that have been unfolding over the Southwest here with Hurricane Helene, you've got these events where local infrastructure is damaged, there's inability to communicate, and perhaps a time in which communication is so important. And by being able to come in and offer some orthogonal mediums of communication that perhaps aren't as affected by these situations, it's a really powerful value proposition, and I think a meaningful opportunity for the consumer base to be able to leverage those capabilities.
Great. So I was wondering if you could expand a little bit more on what it actually means for a device or a chipset to receive Skylo certification. Is it something folks are applying to you for, or is it part of the partnership process, or what does it take for a partner to get that certification?
Yeah, so we work and behave, generally speaking, as an overall mantra or strategy. We again try to model ourselves after the existing mobile network operators or carriers today, and so trying to not change our behaviors too much. And so in that respect, we work to certify chipsets, modules, or devices onto our network. And basically what that means is these various organizations come to us, they request certification, and that certification basically allows either the consumers or enterprises or businesses which ultimately use these devices to gain access to the network. And so the purpose of certification is a fewfold. There are some various compliance pieces as an operator that we have to ensure our devices are compliant with. But first and foremost, it's about ensuring that there's a good user experience, ensuring that the technologies were implemented in the correct manner, that they work very well and interoperate well with the network, that the level of performance is there that's going to have a user have a good experience. The last thing we want as an operator is for someone to have their first chance to use satellite and it be a bad experience because the level of diligence or rigor wasn't put in during that product development. And so we put that in place to help put a stamp on things and say, hey, if this has this stamp, it's allowed on our network and it helps meet this quality bar, so that you're going to have a minimum level of experience and expectation.
So I wanted to ask a bit about the experience on the Pixel 9 smartphones, which I think is where most people first became familiar with Skylo as a company. Can you explain a bit, what is the process like of actually transmitting a message from a Pixel 9 phone to, say, emergency services over Skylo's network? Can you talk about the steps acquiring the signal, encoding that signal, transmitting it, and the satellite's relaying it to, say, Garmin, which is the emergency service provider?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think, first and foremost, the big push with this entire strategy here is to find a way to natively integrate satellite, to make satellite be part of those native experiences. And so, as an example, with this emergency service or SOS service with Google Pixel, the intent is, again, that you're in an emergency situation, you're looking to avail yourself of help. And so, as an example, the first thing that you may do in one of those situations is you try to dial 911. And if you have terrestrial network connectivity, then great. You're put in touch with that 911 operator, you're able to get help. But to the extent that you're not in terrestrial connectivity, whether that's you're in a little dead spot, you're hiking in the mountains, or there's been an infrastructure damage situation, then that user goes to dial 911, but they're prompted with, hey, there's no cellular connectivity available. Would you like to use the satellite SOS service? And so then they're brought into that service. It engages the satellite capabilities on the phone. That satellite then starts to listen for a Skylo signal, the same way that the phone listens for a Verizon or an AT&T signal. It locks onto Skylo's network. It attaches to our network. It alerts the user, hey, you've got a good signal strength. If you have to orient yourself at all, it helps guide you through that process. And then it puts you through a questionnaire trying to get that immediate information. Are you hurt? Do you need help? What's going on? And once it has that information, it relays that over the Skylo network. It relays that then to the emergency service or SOS provider, in this case, Garmin SOS Response Center. They get all of that information. Hey, this is, Mishaal is an example. I need help. I broke my leg. Can you send a helicopter? Whatever that may be. They get that information, and then they have the opportunity to have a conversation back with you. All right, we got your coordinates. We're sending someone on the way. Help me understand X, Y, or Z. So you get that two-way communication. You get confidence that someone heard you when someone's coming. You get to be able to help further provide clarity about what kind of supports that you need. And ultimately then engage in basically a text-based emergency response service with them.
Very cool. It's amazing. I mean, this is future stuff, which is so cool. One topic that's always very close to the hearts of our audience, as well as I think everybody in the space, is around privacy. And especially considering, with the integration with Pixel 9, you're transferring location data and messages. Also, if it's an emergency, it could be a sensitive situation. What kind of encryption, or do you guys have any encryption, are you using in those over the air transmissions to the satellite and back?
Yeah. So if you think about this service, this is, a partnership, as an example, between Skylo as a network operator, Pixel and Android as an application provider, Garmin as an SOS provider. So there's a few different levels to it. If you think about Skylo's perspective, we are the pipe that moves the data. And so we have obligations to ensure that pipe is protected. And so generally speaking, we run the same security protocols, encryption schemes, et cetera, that you would find in the terrestrial network. And so we provide link layer encryption over our network to help ensure all of those transmissions are encrypted. But then on top of that, when it comes to application services, an application service like the SOS aspect of it, then you have the opportunity for organizations like Pixel, Android, Garmin. They have the opportunity to run their own best practice encryption algorithms or things on top of that. And so in many respects, you often have nested capabilities where Skylo provides the foundational layer of our security just on a pure network level. But then when it comes to some of those things like user data, Skylo's not privy to that user data because we're not the application provider, we're simply the network pipe. And then those application providers, again, have the opportunity, and they do use their best standards and best practices to make sure that data is appropriately encrypted end-to-end from their particular end node to its destination end node and back.
Great.
So as the network provider, I'm hoping you can answer one question I had is what is right now under the best environmental conditions? You have line of sight, no clouds or anything, the best data transfer rate between, say, a Pixel 9 and a satellite, and what would it take to improve the amount of data that can be sent over that satellite connection in the future?
Yeah. So what I would suggest is I would position it slightly differently for the moment here. And fundamentally, the services that we have today are really what I'll refer to as packet mobility services. And so the use cases that we try to facilitate things like messaging, SOS, unlocking car doors. I think in the future we're going to roll out some voice-related services, et cetera. But they're really meant to be all narrowband services. And so, I hesitate to say things like, hey, you'll get a megabit per second or 100 kilobits per second, whatever those things be. Because if your application requires that, that's not really the sweet spot for the type of services we're trying to support right now. I think in reality, the best way you should think about us as, a dial-up modem that you get everywhere and ubiquitously for the moment. And then as you want to roll up that value chain, as you want to go to higher and higher bandwidth services, fundamentally, if you think about a wireless link, you have a device, and then you have a receiver for that device. It's unlikely that the handsets that we use are going to materially change from a radio perspective anytime soon, because we're all super hooked on the nice slim form factors, all those various aspects. And so if you want to start driving material change in the data throughput rates, then you have to start making significant investments in infrastructure to help support that. But I think that introduces a little bit of a market bifurcation scenario also.
So just to follow up a little bit on that, right now one of the primary use cases is emergency SOS, as you mentioned. But we're kind of seeing like Google pushing, at least on the terrestrial side, the ability to send images as well as like short videos to emergency service providers. Is that something you see that it might be possible in the near or distant future, being able to upload like a photo of your remote location or even like a short video to show, your exact situation?
Yeah, so I think the short answer is those are actually things we do today. But the interesting piece, which I was pleasantly surprised by as I got further into this segment, we often talk about AI a lot these days, specifically in the context of things like chat agents, these response systems, this generative AI, these large models, etc. But one of the areas that this technology has been applied pretty effectively these past few years is about producing very high quality, very low bitrate audio and video codecs. And so it's been incredibly exciting to see the kind of quality that you can push through such narrowband data rates in these two domains. And so, we do, again, those audio and some of those image pieces today. And I think that's going to be a big growth area within this segment also, just given the amount of great progress, quite frankly, that's been made in this particular encoding segment, even over the last 2 or 3 years.
Exciting. Very cool stuff. So kind of expanding on that, what regions is the Skylo network currently available in, and what are your guys' expansion plans? Like, where are you looking to take Skylo from this point on?
Yeah, so today, as an example, we work with multiple different satellite constellation providers. Today, we orchestrate different satellite assets all around the world with our wonderful satellite partners. And over the top of that, we run a singular Skylo network. And so today, we provide coverage over regions like the US, Canada, Europe, Australia, different parts of Southeast Asia, etc. But fundamentally, we have the capability to provide anywhere on a global basis. And so, as you see time go on, you're going to see us continue to turn on coverage, expand coverage in more regions. We're in the process, as an example, of turning on coverage over Brazil right now. And so you're going to continue to see us roll out country by country kind of as the months go on here. And so I think the sky's the limit. And just as this capability continues to proliferate, we'll continue to expand to more and more markets.
Very cool.
In this case, literally, the sky is the limit.
That's right.
Space is the limit, right?
Space is the limit.
Well, and it's really cool. So over on Skylo.tech on your website, you can show all the products that currently use Skylo's technology, including the Pixel 9, as well as one of my favorite smartphones, the Cat S75, a nice rugged mobile phone, and the Ulefone Armor 23 Ultra, which is pretty cool. So you can check all that out at Skylo.tech. And it's great to see, more and more, kind of partners coming on board with your guys' technology, Andrew. That's pretty awesome. So.
We're really excited about that, and I think we've got a slew of exciting things coming out throughout the end of this year and start of next year. So I think this is just the beginning from what consumers are going to have access to. So really excited about that.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for putting your genius to work and giving us satellite connectivity for our phones. And thanks for the time to chat.
Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
All right.
Boom.
Now we know everything there is to know about how satellite phones work on our smartphones. So thank you, Mishaal, for setting that up with Skylo. That was a great conversation. And thank you to everybody listening to it. Sorry. So as you tell, Andrew was in a room using his desktop mic, and my mic was a little hot on that recording day. I didn't realize. So we did our best to make the audio as best as it could be. So we appreciate everybody listening to it. So thank you.
Yeah.
I hope you learned something from it, because we certainly did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, what do we say we wrap up this show? We got one email.
We got to get an email in there.
We always want to hear from you. So write us at contact@AndroidFaithful. I'll be honest, we haven't got a lot of emails with questions and feedback and thoughts and stuff like that. So get on your keyboards. You can send an audio voicemail message. You can send a video. Keep them to 30 seconds. Or you can send an email like this one, Jason, right?
Indeed. We have this one from Tony, who says, let me hide the email address so I'm not blocking you on the screen, Mishaal. Tony says, I own a Pixel 7 and an iPhone 15 Pro Max. Both of these devices have serious issues when it comes to the accuracy of dictation and voice control. If you had to predict which platform is going to fix their dictation problems first, which one would you choose and why? I've been primarily an iPhone user for a very long time, but I've gotten sick of Apple's support's suggestion that I reset my phone and set it up as brand new every time I report a new bug. I did this once to prove to them that it had nothing to do with a corrupt OS, but this is still their blanket response to every problem I report, and I'm sick of it. Access to the accessibility team at Google has gotten incredibly easier with the Be My Eyes app. Making the switch to Android is not a simple task since everything I do has to be done by voice due to a long list of health problems. I'm hoping you can make a really good case for switching to Android, but the reasons to switch really have to outweigh the reasons to stick with iOS. Well, I think what's hard about this question for me is I am not a user of these accessibility features. So it's largely, me trying to do my job of putting myself into your position to know whether you should switch or not. It sounds like, it's a real toss up for you. I think there's a couple of things to consider, and I can speak more from the Google side than I can the iOS side. You mentioned Be My Eyes. It's awesome. It's a really kind of great kind of symbol of Google's prowess in this department. So that's one thing. If they're developing products like this that are useful for you, I would imagine they're going to develop more. Google has some very flexible voice control options. So you've got deep integration in the Android accessibility suite. You've got customizable voice commands. You've got hands-free control options. There's a whole lot there to explore. And, again, you would be a better person than I to know whether it's kind of solves what you're looking for, but there's a lot to explore there. In general, the Android ecosystem is less restrictive when it comes to finding an alternative solution if that's necessary. So there's other alternatives out there that you could explore. And we talk about it every single week on this show. Google is so committed and so driven around artificial intelligence and machine learning that I can only assume that means even more improvements in the realm of voice recognition technology, more than they've already done. They have a lot of interest and a lot of resources geared towards exactly that. So not being super close to the iOS side, that's what I can say for Android and for Google from my perspective.
Yeah, and I think
differences?
For us, we can see and touch and do everything by touch and sight, right?
Yeah.
So for us to switch between an Android and iOS device, it's something, it would be an inconvenience, sure, but it wouldn't be that difficult for us to learn everything new. But for someone who has to depend on using your voice for everything, I feel like, it would be a much more difficult task to actually migrate between ecosystems. So, I can't tell you whether or not you should migrate to Android. If I were in a situation, I might not. I might just stick with what I know and what I'm used to dealing with, even if it is frustrating, because relearning, I can't tell you whether or not Android is actually any better because we're not in the same boat. But what I will say is what you're asking at and initially is, which one do you think will get better at voice control? I don't know if Google's going to be applying this specifically towards voice control, but we're seeing kind of this use of its generative AI model to provide better image descriptions, more accurate image descriptions than before. I think it would be interesting to see Google and Apple apply this sort of technology to improve voice control versus, so you don't have to exactly say the correct command for something else. It could interpret basically what you're trying to say and try to get you to the right control or do the right thing that you meant to say. So I think that maybe that might eventually, hopefully in the future, alleviate some concerns with voice control. But, I don't know how far away we are, or if Google or Apple are even in the works of implementing that kind of technology into accessibility tools beyond what we already got from Google.
It really is, at the end of the day, a guessing game, from our place. Reading the tea leaves takes you only so far. But I'm curious to know if and when you make a decision and you explore that route. We'd love to hear back from you, Tony. Do a follow-up at some point and let us know kind of where you landed and how you feel, because I think these kinds of experiential stories aren't told enough. Like we talk a lot about accessibility features without actually, being in a position to rely upon them. And so folks like you who do, it's a really valuable story to tell when you have those experiences. So you have an open platform here. Let us know. Contact at androidfaithful.com when you decide, and let us know how it goes for you. We'd love to do a follow-up.
Absolutely. And if anybody else has any questions about anything like that, anything at all, email us at contact@androidfaithful.com. And that said, we're going to wrap everything up here because this is an extra long episode. Before we head out, though, Jason, you got anything you want to share with the folks?
I mean, nothing major, just youtube.com/@techsploder. That is the YouTube channel where I have all my stuff, and including the video that I posted that is showing up on the front page. That is so interesting that it's not here. Anyways, go there and you can find my my OxygenOS 15 video, and I will troubleshoot and see why it's not right here where it should be.
Cool. Alrighty then. Mishaal, where can folks find you and what you got going on in your world?
You can find me on a whole bunch of places, all linked to my Linktree website, or my Linktree profile. I am on X, Mastodon, Threads, Reddit, Discord, Telegram, etc. I'm on many different platforms. So if you want to follow me on one of those mediums, you can find out about the posts that I make on a regular basis about the world of Android, and as well as, like all the upcoming features in Android 16, for example, and some other things that I don't get to talk about on this show because we're already running late as is, and so there's no possible way we could cover every single thing that I write about. But of course, if you do want to follow that stuff, you should definitely follow me on all the social media channels, and also support me on Patreon if you want to support the work that I do.
Excellent. We do appreciate the work you do. And for me, just go to androidfaithful.com, go to Patreon, support us. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. You guys rock. So until next week, remember, we're not going to be live next week, but we will be on a premiere at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on YouTube, youtube.com/Daily Tech News Show. So you get your weekly Android Faithful fix there. We just won't be live, but we'll be there in the chat. We'll chat with you there and hope for the best with the election in the United States next week. Cross your fingers, get out and vote. If you haven't, early voting, if you can do it, do it. In the meantime, just go follow us on social, do all the fun stuff. I'm tired. We're going to wrap it up. Have a great week. Love your Android. Tell the world about the podcast. And
love your Android.
Hug your plushie.
Hug your Android.
We'll see you next week. Happy Halloween. I hit a wall there. I got tired real quick.
Oh yeah, I'm feeling it too.
Yep.
All right. Well, real quick, af.showbot.tv is where you can go to help us title things. Plush Droid Horror Show. Ooh. Qualcomm versus ARM goes nuclear. Bionic vibration motor turbo. Love that. Still loving Circle to Search. Locked T-Mobile. Snapdragon 8 Elite DisARMed.
That's a good one.
That is a good one. Skylo is out of this world. Skylo Satellite SOS. Skylo's the limit. Hard to count on the runway. Chunky pills making the screen change mode. That's good. Return of the one-click toggle. 7 years of updates. Thanks, Google. Pixel 10 Futurama Bender Cam, and OnePlus Turbo Bionic Vibration. Which was the one? Snapdragon 8 Elite DisARMed. Do you like that one?
That's
I
pretty
think
cool.
the two that are the most clever are Snapdragon 8 Elite DisARMed and the Skylo's the limit. But I don't think a lot of people know what Skylo is.
I don't want to
until
lead
we
with
introduce it
Skylo
on the show. Putting them in the title, yeah. But the Snapdragon 8 Elite DisARMed, that one's a good one.
I say let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that. All right.
Yay.
Good job, everybody.
Snapdragon 8 Elite ... DisARMed. Get it? armed. Okay. All right. Well, it is late, and we got 2 out of 3 of us that are about to crash out,
And we still got work to do tonight.
and I still have a bunch of work to do.
All right.
So,
Well, everybody, we will see you next week, pre-recorded. And then we'll be back live in 2 weeks. So
bye, y'all. Thank you so much for being here. Couldn't do it without you.
Night.
take it
See
easy.
ya.
Good night.